Please welcome back Jimmy Nelson. Jimmy.
Thank you.
All right. As you saw at the beginning, a lot of people are newcomers, first-timers. Last year, you are a photographer. What did you talk about?
What I talked about was this. I think this is an illustration of 35 of the world's last indigenous cultures / tribes, and very simply, from out an aesthetic, romantic, emotional, idealistic perspective, I wanted to put them on a pedestal.
Right.
But what's very important is I'm not the first. And I was inspired by a photographer 100 years ago by the name of Edward Sheriff Curtis. And what he did was he put the Native American Indian on the same pedestal. And for a period of 30 years, he made 30 different volumes, which whilst he was doing was not appreciated. But 100 years later, these volumes were found. And what was important, that it was realized that this has all completely disappeared. Utterly, and it was extraordinary. And what I'm trying to do is emulate him on an international scale, and before it disappears, acknowledge it for what it is, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Exactly, and that was your talk in 2013. What happened after that talk?
Well, after the talk, I published a book, and essentially everything changed. It was shocking. Because what happened was, prior to that, I was just a photographer, and then after the talk, standing here, I think essentially there was a face, a head, with an opinion. And that opinion was asked and invited around the world, and this is the consequence of it.
Can you give... Wow! And you were with us at TEDx Amsterdam, and then you were invited to TED Global.
So I went to... Oh, can I pause it? Okay.
Is that our cue?
Okay, well, this isn't the cue. I was invited to TED Global.
Yes.
Which was a stage on the beach in Rio for 2,500 people communicating around the world, essentially about the same subject.
Right.
But what was a consequence of that, and primarily standing here last year, I was invited by organizations from the CNN, the BBC, the ZDF, saying, right, okay, you have an opinion, what's exactly happening? We're going to come with you and film you as you go back to some of the tribes that you're talking about.
With the photos, you went back to the tribes.
With the books.
Yeah.
And start a discussion, what's this really about? Is it just about pretty pictures we're going to hang on the wall, or is there something far more profound going on, and we want to investigate it? So this is the beginning of it. This was returning back to Namibia recently. It's a little bit theatrical at the beginning, I apologize, because it's television, so... but we're going to get to the point in a minute. Here I am making some more pictures, so they had to sort of remind ourselves and the audience what I was trying to do. But what was extraordinarily beautiful is when you go back to these people, and I sort of feel it now, utter stillness. You see the shock on their faces. My God,
first reaction,
he's come back. And I'm not the first person to have been to most of these places, nor the first person to have made pictures. But I think I'm the first person to actually come good of my word. I turned back up. Here he is. Obviously, they recognize me.
Right.
And sort of flailing in with my cameras going, you know. And then there was utter silence. You can see it here, complete silence. And then tears came into their eyes. And then emotion. And you really saw their backs straightening, their chins raising, their eyes lightening up. Because it was all about pride. It's all about, I have included them in this book. But even more excitingly, when you start turning the pages, they see, this is in Vanuatu, only last week with the CNN, they see that they're part of this palette, this kaleidoscope of the world's last human ethnic beauty, and they're a celebration of it. And you really saw the pride in their eyes, and they ended said, you have to become part of our tribe. So you see there a picture of me with the book.
That's so great. And I remember...
there was one there's one technical problem. You turn up with a book, and you always think you have the answers. And so I came in with a few books. They're a little heavy. And then everybody wanted a book. So you give one book to the chief, and then everybody's queuing up behind the chief, waiting for their book, and explaining to them, I'll come back again, but this next time with a truck or something. Yeah.
And what I remember the most of your talk was the lessons that you learned of those tribes. Could you give some examples?
They were my lessons. They're very personal. They're very subjective. And you've been kind enough, from what I understand, to produce a TED book this year based on 3 of those lessons from last year.
Right.
So I'd like to leave you with another lesson, if you don't mind. And it was a lesson given to me by the Himba. And I've been there 3 times now. This was just 3 weeks ago. And as I explained a few minutes ago, it's extremely emotional. We were sitting down, and I think one evening we probably had a little bit too much to drink, and the stars were out, and everybody was sort of giving each other a sort of hug. And I looked at the chief, and I'd noticed in the village next to us this very, very big fence, which is their sort of town hall. It's a very substantial structure. Had disappeared. And I said, you know, either I've drunk too much and the stars are fine, or am I right in saying this fence was there last time? He says, yeah, you're right. We've taken it away. And I sort of got a bit close, and I said, well, can you elaborate? Why is it gone? He said, a big chief died. I said,
Big chief.
Big chief died. And I lost the plot a bit. I said, big chief died. Can you explain? He said, yeah. When big chief dies, we have to destroy something he's created. Again, I was sort of thinking, okay, please elaborate. So, well, once we've destroyed it, the whole village destroys it in a ceremony. Then we have time as a group of people to reflect. And then once we've reflected, the whole village comes back together and we rebuild what he had made and we destroyed, but even bigger and better. Right. And only then can we as a community have the respect for who he is in so far as acknowledging we are only who we are because of him and our forefathers and our forefathers. And as I explained, I was a little bit emotional, so I started crying because only a year ago my father had died. And it made me realize that I'm only standing here essentially today because of him, right. And he only did what he did. He was an Antarctic explorer because of his forefathers, and et cetera, et cetera. So I rang my mum when I came back, and I said, Mum, I had another experience. She said, oh dear, what's it about this time? And they said, well, it's about this and about Dad dying and everything. And what they do, they destroy something. You could hear silence at the end of her telephone. She said, you're not going to come and knock the house down. I said, no, I'm not going to come and knock the house down. But it does teach us, as they're teaching me, there are so many things still to be learned from these extraordinary, glorious people. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to share it with you last year and today.
Always a pleasure. Mr. Jimmy Nelson. Thank you. All right.